Yes, sir.
But
Good morning, sir.
yeah, good morning. It's good afternoon for you. I think it's morning for me. Right. I mean, how you want to run this session? I mean, tell me. I'm more than happy
to can you please share your journey and experiences with us from NIFT to where you are?
Okay, thank you. Right. So I think as you already introduced me, so I was there in 2001 to 2005 batch. I'm from Ranchi itself, so I think I was born there, but spent my schooling traveling different places within Jharkhand because my dad used to work in the state government. So, so I think very much. I think my journey, I would say, not just inspired. I think the foundation was laid in it formally. Now it is NIMT.
Yes.
I think I was fortunate to have some good mentors at that point in time, some really helpful seniors. Um, um, Probably some of you would already know. I think Professor M.K. Tiwari was there, one of the faculty members in NIMT at that point in time. Now he's the IM Mumbai's director at this point in time. So he was the only person who was kind of, involved in research, and he was running. Because we don't have, I don't think still we have any research facilities in the NT. I'm not very sure unless you all can update me on that. But he was probably the only person in the whole NIFT at that point in time who was doing research and was involving students. Many of my batchmates probably started working with him probably in the first year. Probably I was the latest, and I mean I was quite late in joining. I remember joining probably in my final year, maybe second or first semester at that point in time because I wasn't very keen in the beginning about research. And like probably all of us, I wanted to finish my degree and maybe get a good job and do an MBA afterwards, like a typical at that point in time what we all used to think that we should be doing. But I remember, I think when I went to in my final year, and I think placement has just started, and I just started questioning, like, whether this is something I want to do or something different. And I always had aspiration for going for higher education, but I was thinking like maybe working for a few years and then perhaps that would be the best time to go for an MBA and so on. So anyhow, I think I decided to like at least get involved in research. I think there was about 10 students from my batch who were working with Professor Tiwari at that point in time. Of course, number of seniors, and we have seen their journey. So I think most of them went abroad. I think majority of them. Some who didn't decide to go abroad were mainly because for different reasons, like either their families were not confident to send them abroad at that point in time, or some other commitment they had. So, but still they got in nice places like ISC Bangalore, other areas. Some qualified for GATE, and they decided to pursue that pathway. But I think 90% of them decided to go abroad, and because of their involvement in research, and they started writing research papers. The interesting thing was that Professor Tiwari had never been to any overseas country. I think he came out first time, if I'm not wrong, in 2007. So until that point in time, he used to, contact researchers overseas by, reading their papers, reading their work, and then assigning one of us to say, like, why don't you work in that area? Like, this overseas researcher has got really excellent profile, and perhaps let's introduce each other and see if we can do some research together. And that's how I used to get in touch with number of overseas researchers. Many of them will respond, some will not respond, depending upon their, availability. And eventually, we all were paired with some overseas researchers who were kind of research leaders in their respective field. And we started working together. We started writing papers together, and eventually, whenever these scholarship opportunities emerge in those institutions, he just asked like, would you be okay to take my student if they meet your requirement? And eventually, that's how most of us got placed in the some, I think, students who really wanted to go to states, they have to clear GRE. So many of them were preparing for GRE in their final year. I think because that's one of the entry criteria down there. So in my batch, about five of us went to states, and five of us somehow ended up in the UK. Before going to UK, I think I went to Hong Kong because a couple of our seniors were working in Hong Kong with a professor there, and he was looking for another student at that point in time. He had a scholarship and everything lined up. And they just, asked Professor Tiwari asked me, like, would you mind sending your CV to him? And I said, yes, why not? So that's how I ended up going to Hong Kong. But I think it was to do the MPhil there. So it was fully funded scholarship to do MPhil. But there was an unfortunate incident at one time. My dad had a severe heart attack just before I was about to start. So I had to stay with the family. But I think the my supervisor back in Hong Kong was probably impressed with my work. So he said, "Okay, you missed out the entry time. Why don't you come and work for me as a research assistant for a year, and then you can restart your MPhil in the following year?" I said, "Brilliant. Why not? I mean, I missed an opportunity. Of course, I was a bit sad, but family is important." And eventually, I went in December. I went in 2005. I remember. So I finished in July 2005. I'm still working on the research projects and papers with this professor. July, I was supposed to join. Normally, the September is the time when normally you join in overseas universities. I missed that, but December, eventually I went there and I worked there for about nearly 6 months. In between, one of my seniors, I think from the previous batch, he was about to go to UK and eventually he decided to go to US and in the last minute. So there was already a scholarship, everything lined up for him in the UK, but he went to the States. So that position was kind of vacant. So I was asked, like, would you be interested? I said, I'm not sure because I haven't done my master's yet, and asking for a PhD. So I was very hesitant at that point in time. Like, you have to go through, very much sequential manner that do undergraduate, masters, and then PhD. But somehow Professor Tiwari convinced me, like, don't lose by sending your CV. I said, okay, if you're insisting, I will send my CV. And I was just fortunate, of God's grace, you can say, like he said, no, no, you can come over. You've got enough credentials as a researcher, and in a master's or MPhil, actually, you learn how to be a researcher. So you got the training already. You got the evidence in terms of the papers that you have. And to be honest, at that point in time, for me, I didn't realize the, what we call different ranking of the journals and other things. For me, it was just a paper, and I was very happy with that. And they knew, okay, this is published in a really good journal, and not many people publish in those journals. So they saw me in a very different light than I was seeing myself. So eventually, of course, it was a good opportunity because you would have saved my 2 years. If you do masters in Asian countries, 2 years. In the UK, it's actually a year. So I decided to go in 6 months' time. Spoke to my Hong Kong supervisor. He was supportive. He said, "It's your career. You decide." And when we create those kind of collaboration, you just carry on working. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem working. Even I'm here, or it doesn't really matter. My physical presence is not a problem, and I will continue to work with you." And in fact, I think I wrote my first 12 papers with him. So I was still in the UK, working with my on my PhD. I was very open, and I said to my UK supervisor that whatever work I'm doing, I will do. But you okay if I spend some time when I have free time? So I'm not going to affect my work. If I work collaboratively with somebody else, and he was absolutely all right. So he said, if you don't, if I give you a task, do it in a week. If I deliver it in a week, this is not a problem for him. And I think it's a culturally different. I think like in India and probably in South Asia, I think there's a more expectation from all of us, and we work really hard. But I think that really pays off when you come to the Western side of the world because here culture I feel is more relaxed. For example, if Hong Kong supervisor says to me that because do it in 5 days, it means 3 days because he'll start nagging me after day three. Have you finished your work? And if it is 5 days, then you are not the best performer in that sense. If you really want to, create some impression. In the UK, it was just other way around. So they say you 1 week, they know that it may take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And if you deliver that in 2 days, I think it didn't take more than a month to build impression. So it is just a post reflection. Of course, at that point in time, I was not knowing what I'm doing, but it was task given. I didn't find it was very difficult. I had nothing else to do in my spare time, so I spent my time 2 days. It was done, and they were super impressed with that, like how quickly you can do. I mean, they think you're brilliant, but I know it's nothing about brilliance. It's about just the hard work. So I think sometimes what I want to always say here, like we often underestimate ourselves. So we prejudge ourselves too much. We think we are not good at it. Of course, we are not. We cannot be good in everything. But I think what I've learned over a period of time that, and that's a good way of looking at ourselves. Otherwise, you become arrogant that you're really good. I think you should always see that you're not good and you need to learn more and more and more. But don't say with yourself that you're not good. Let other people judge you. That would be my advice. And I think that's what I've learned from my experience, that every time they say, oh, I always think I'm not good at all. I mean, you can say, yes, I'm a deputy vice chancellor, almost second in command in the university, but I still feel a lot to learn and I'm learning every day. If you say inside deeply, I'm really confident, I would say no, not at all. Every day I worry, like, oh my God, what I'm going to do. But do people perceive in the same way? That's totally different. So sometimes people say, wow, some people say, oh, you're doing great job, but is their perception. So one thing I've learned is just to be quiet and let people judge you for your work, what you do. Don't really under-evaluate yourself. And I think, don't, I would say, like, hesitate to take a risk. I mean, so I think my career journey has been more like an opportunity that has emerged and not to say no. I mean, one thing probably I learned from my dad, I remember like when I got offered in NIFT, I didn't want to join at that point in time. Like all of us, we always wanted to be in IIT. And I had a similar feeling that, okay, I missed out this time. I'm going to try again next year. And I want to be in IIT. And my dad's always said, okay, no problem if you want to try again next year. It's your choice. And he's not going to stick, but he said, you're getting an offer now. Don't say no to anything that comes your way. And you can always give up, and I will not stop you. And that was a good enough confidence for me to start. Of course, in a year time, I reflected. I said, what point of restarting things again, rather than sticking? And I think, and I've never regretted my journey, to be honest. So another thing to learn is that, if situation takes you in different direction, I mean, it's just a matter of time. We think that it's a worse situation, but eventually, you will emerge as a winner after a time. So that's another thing. Same like in this position where I am right now. I never imagined I will get it here in next 10 years. Well, that was my something, my ambition to be in next 10 years time, because it's quite senior position. But I was just probably looking to move closer to my family, and then suddenly a recruiter approached me that, would you be interested in this role? And following my basic principle, I said, yeah, what's harm in exploring? And I think going through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews and all stuff, eventually I landed up this job. I said, brilliant. So if I would have said no in my first instance, just thinking that I'm not ready, I wouldn't be here. So probably I will stop here, but I think like after doing my PhD in Exeter, I just wanted a little bit adventurous. So I said, I've lived here 4 years in the UK. Where else I can work? Option was either to Europe, in camps. I thought about India too at that point in time, but I still haven't finished my PhD. And I was in my final year. My scholarship was running out, and then I had to apply for jobs to maintain. Because I just wanted to be more independent, not relying on my parents to send me money. That from the day I went abroad, I stopped asking for money from my parents, because yeah, yes, I was earning salary. Why not? Good enough for me to survive. And any extra bit I can earn myself. In UK, there's a tradition like you can do some part-time jobs, and that could be anything. And I think probably in India, I'm not sure. Probably you guys, new generation, you would have your different view, but there we distinguish between the work, right? And I think we look people by what they do, and I think we form a perception. When I came here, although I was funded by scholarship, but actually there was a little bit of problem because the scholarship that I was funded only covered my UK fees. And normally the UK fees and international fees is almost twice. So in the UK, if a PhD, if you pay about, I think, £5,000, actually, I think 3 times. So international fees are £15,000. Um, that time, I think, when I got an offer letter, I was told that fees is covered. They didn't say UK or overseas. I only got to know when I landed here that actually it was only UK fees, not the international. So the scholarship at that point in time, I was probably getting about £10,000, and so I had to find some extra money to cover that cost. So yes, that money maintenance was good enough to transfer that, and that's what I did. But then I need to survive in terms of paying for my accommodation and other things. So I had to find some part-time job, and you will be surprised. The first part-time job I found within the university, catering, and it was about cleaning dishes in the and I think I remember probably doing that job for 6 months. So I was cleaning dishes in the catering university catering hall, And that's how I'm earning some money. And then, of course, you wait for other good opportunities. Then I got one for data analyst that was better paid, of course, in a nice environment. I can work at home. Um, but one thing I learned from that, no work is small or bigger. And I think in this, at least in the Western culture, nobody sees you in that way, that, oh, you're cleaning dishes, right? We distinguish ourselves based on earning power or what background, what religion you come from. At least they have gone beyond that, these things. I remember going to an university event, and somebody, of course, people were sitting together, and the professor was sitting, very well known, not in my field, not my supervisor. And somebody just asked you, like, so what your wife does? And he said, she's a waiter. I said, "Oh my God, in India, even if she is, nobody will tell that openly in a big party when like other really good, and nobody had any sort of feeling in that way. There is a risk for work. That's another really is very important to know. And third thing I would say, like, don't compare yourself with anyone. Like often we tend to compare, like somebody is really good, somebody really fast, they are very clever. We all have a different pace of doing things. And I think we all are good in something. It's just, it takes time to really recognize what you're really good at. So I think your comparison should be with yourself, with no one else. So don't look at somebody is progressing very fast, somebody is progressing very slow, somebody is going really, doing things, in NIFT, in institution, you will know, like some people take months to prepare before exams. Some people are so clever, 2 nights is done. Some people even one night. Some people even don't read the notes. Maybe they're somehow lucky. They just need to read 5 questions, and exactly those 5 questions will come in exam. So there are all sort of characters in my batch as well. So there are a lot number of people, for example, I won't name my batchmate. He was also in the same lab working for Professor Tiwari, but he would hardly probably be reading notes or making any notes. But he will come one day before the exam, knocking at windows, can you share your notes? And some people will kick him out, but he's a good friend of mine, so he will come in my room. I said, all right, I'm reading this note, you read that one. And for some reason, exactly the same question will come in the exam. So, it was not about one particular module. I mean, any program. So he was just lucky in that sense. Of over time, we learn, okay, whatever you're learning, you used to ask him. Definitely that question is going to come in the exam. And it was 50-50 in most of the time. So, yeah, and he, I think, also graduated probably with maybe CGPA about 7.5 or 8. So not bad, just with 1 or 2 days of preparation. Where some of us probably will take weeks, some of them probably months. But but that's on your own abilities and something yourself better. So that's probably I will stop. I'm not sure if I'm talking too much, and maybe you have other questions to ask.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really inspiring. Sir, I wanted to ask, how did NIFT shape you where you are today? NIFT ने आपको कैसे shape किया है?
So I was just telling you that, like, the whole foundation is, it started from NIFT. I mean, of course, I mean, I talked more about the opportunities that NIFT gave me. But I think what probably I learned more from NIFT, because I think most of us, again, I said, I don't know about you guys because I'm talking about another 10 years, or maybe, not 20 years, not 10 years, 20 years plus. So things must have changed. But at that point in time, if I remember correctly, like most of us, were really frustrated. So we thought, okay, we couldn't get anywhere nice. That's where we're ending up here in NIFT. And so we saw ourselves as a failure in many sense. So we were good, but we just couldn't just get there. And it was quite kind of demotivating. But then we used to look after, for example, seniors were always our source of inspiration. And we haven't found a single senior who is not in a good position. So that was the only kind of thing that we're holding us back. Okay, I mean, it's not that the our future is really dark. It's not, no, definitely not. I think NIFT was, and probably still to date, I think you guys, we're always good in cracking, you know, um, gate and all the interest examination. So then when you see those things, then you say, like, it's not about abilities necessarily. It's just probably missed opportunity, sometime bad luck, or like maybe it's, for somehow somebody else trumped, and because when we have limited position, somebody has to lose. So for whatever reason, maybe that's why we're on the losing end. So that gave us more determination, and I think the kind of effort that we used to put in work, because if you know that, okay, you are not in the best position, but you could have been, and you have got all the abilities. So I think that kind of I would say just of like not giving up. I think something came from that, and working really hard, because in somehow you're back of your mind, you think, okay, you're not in a really best position, so you have to really work harder than others. And that really, of course, puts you in a good space and you move forward in your career, because that determination. And I think, when you come from place where actually is when you know that if you're not really putting your effort, then you will struggle. But that effort actually is more than enough to actually push you to wherever you want to be in the future. And nobody looks at, I mean, up backwards, to be honest. I mean, it's only the point when actually you're going through that process, when you feel that maybe it's not being valued, or maybe I could have done better. But when actually you create your pathway, as you learn from those kind of experiences, those actually you start looking at in a much more positive light afterwards, because you see as a strength, because it is a 4 years of rigorous training that you go through, ups and downs, which actually prepares you how you're gonna operate in a world when actually you are there afterwards. And I think, and you can say, like, you look at any batchmates, from onwards, I think you would see everybody is now in a really good position. If I look at all my batchmates, about 70 of them, I think maybe we lost track of first, another 10 who probably don't keep in touch, but that's 60 of them. I think we know where they are, and they all are in a good position. They're all around the world. I think in when I came to England, I think I thought probably it's only a few of us. I mean, we knew one or two seniors here, but then we found out so many of our super seniors, like from 98, 99 batch, they're here in and around. I was visiting Abu Dhabi for a work purpose, I think last year, 2 years ago. There I met again a couple of seniors. So I just tried to search on LinkedIn, is there anyone down? And I was pretty surprised that there are. I mean, some of them, of course, were, who did from ADC, so the diploma courses, and they're all in a good position. Of course, when we were there was always a tiff between the B.Tech students and the ADC student. But I mean, they're all in a good positions, and they all want to support, NIFT, and they're very proud of their from where they come. So I think that the passion, the motivation, the hard work, and the thinking of never giving up is something that you've learned from that process. But probably I'm not sure if you will get that from IITs, to be honest, because there that you're in a previous institution. And spoken to a number of people from IITs. Some of course are good. Some people are really arrogant because they think they have achieved whatever. But but when you compare with them, you are no lesser than them. But when I was there, certainly we never thought that we could surpass. And I don't see it at all that way. So so that's something I would say Nifty has a very
So,
important role to play in that determination.
sir, what were the ups and downs you faced during your journey?
There's a lot, like I said, like I talked about some personal impact, like when I was almost about to miss the opportunity to go overseas, then recovering. Um, like I said, life is not always smooth. I mean, apart from personal things, sometimes you do really well in your career. Sometimes there is a time when you get distracted, possibly, or things don't go in your way. Like research is very much like that. So sometimes you're really successful. So sometimes you're publishing in really good journals, and it goes very smoothly. Sometimes it goes through many revisions and rejections. So there are times. So if I look at for example, if my research journey graph, I mean, I was publishing really well. Then there is a dip, probably came in 2010, and that was mainly because I stopped publishing and stopped focusing on my finalizing my PhD at that point in time. And also sometimes I felt like this no observation. I'm totally wrong, but I felt like when I came in 2005 here in the UK, I don't think the research culture was well developed among PhD students. So yes, UK was always known as a research power hub, but it was mostly professors, like established academics who were doing research. Um, the research in the PhD community was not there. So people would finish their PhD, then they will think about publication, which I felt was pretty backwards, because I came from a very different background. Because we were in NIFT as an undergraduate, still publishing there. Hong Kong people publish like machines, and here. So I think most of my PhD colleagues in the UK were really jealous of me in some way, and they used to tease me. Um, that like you're wasting your time, you should be focusing on your PhD. And I said, I'm not affecting my PhD, and that's a commitment I've given to my supervisor. I'm doing my work, but I'm doing something. And I think now I reflect why they used to say, because for them it's one project, And for me, it was like multi-project, and I think NIFT trained me how to use my time. It is not probably the best way of training, if I have to be very honest, because not sure how much you know, like in Professor Tiwari's lab, like as you all know, that you have 9 to 5 commitment in the institutions. You will have lectures in the morning, afternoon, then you have got lab sessions in most of the afternoon. So we used to report to the Professor Tiwari's lab by 5:30. So after the like quick break after the lectures and lab sessions, and then we will stay with him in the lab until maybe 9 when he will go for dinner, then we will go for dinner. But then we'll come back in the lab again in 10, half 10 time. He will come back as well. And then he will stay with us until midnight, sometime 1 o'clock. And then, of course, when you awake until 1 o'clock, you break your sleep rhythm, and then you will stay awake until 2 or 3 or something like that. So that will have an impact on your lecture next day. But that time, because normally I always find till date, I think almost 20 years, I still find that's my most productive time. Because even like right now, my job is lots about just meetings in this administrative role. So I'm busy in meeting 9 to 5, 9 to 6. But then I don't get time to do anything during that time. But it doesn't really affect me. People say, how you still publish? Because I said I don't really work in the time at all. So my working time is from 8 until 12 at least. Some depending upon how much job I still work in the same fashion. So that is my personal protected time where actually I can do. And I think when in the night time is quieter, there's no disturbance, I think I'm more focused. So when I had more time where I could spend time in the daytime, I tried experimenting, and I think in the morning I had more distraction. So either because you're hearing noises, or you want to meet your friends, or you want to go out. In the night, you can't do anything. So like they're all busy, all sleeping. You've got nothing else to do, no distraction. So I think I was doing probably 25% of my work in the daytime, even doing my PhD, but 75% would be in the nighttime. I think, but that I would not advise everybody to do that. I mean, even if you do, don't go beyond midnight. That would be my advice. But I had a really bad pattern. So I think during my entire PhD, I used to be awake in the night until in the morning until 5 o'clock. But then I would sleep at 5 and wake up at 1 because there were no enough classes here that you have to be there at 9 o'clock unless you've got a meeting with your supervisor. So that probably is not the best thing to kind of for your body. Yes, I achieved so many things, but it does affect your body. It leads to some health complications. So it's more about balancing your time. That is very important. I think probably I'm getting distracted from your question. I think that's great.
Well, thank you so much, sir. Sir, I would like to ask, among so many possible career options, how did you gain clarity that research was the path you wanted to pursue?
I think it was probably driven from, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this and demotivate you all. Because I think when I went for my internship, because I was in metallurgy and I went to Bokaro Steel Plant, I went to Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, and I actually, it's a personal problem. I'm quite, sensitive to allergy. So with dust, I think I always fall sick. So when I went in those environment for a month, I just felt probably I can't survive. So I think I need to move beyond the factory settings. So that was the first motivation I had, because I knew that if I'm there, I'm mostly going to be sick. Because as soon as I get exposed to dust till date, I just catch cold, cough. Sometimes I will have breathing issues and so on. So I felt like I need more like an office environment than actually a really kind of a field environment. So I said, what other career options are there? So of course, when you think about that, it means that you want to do an office job mostly than you think about doing an MBA. So I was actually thinking about doing an MBA soon after. But then if you want to do MBA in a good institution, you need at least a couple of years of experience. And in between, like I said, I always wanted to go for higher degrees. So either an MBA. PhD was not on my radar at that point in time, but my parents are doctors. So they're medical doctors. So I had a peer pressure there because whenever I used to go and see, my parents' friends and some gathering, everybody will ask what you're doing. I say I'm doing engineering, and then everybody will say, why you're not doing medicine? Your parents are doctors. You should have done medicine. So I really got fed up. I said I'm going to add doctor in my name, and the only way I can do without doing medicine. So that's why I have to do a PhD. So these were a couple of motivations, and then this is the reason I joined quite late in that group with Professor Tiwari. I said one way I can possibly do that. So I discussed this with my parents. I discussed with my friends. Of course, people who were, I mean, friends who were already working with Positive Eye, they actually motivated me as well. They said, why don't you think about research, and why don't you, I mean, research was probably at that point in time was like a staircase, like to get where you wanted to be. So it was not, I would say it was natural that I was really passionate about finding something at that point in time. But if I wanted to do a master's or PhD in future, you need to have some background. And also I think I was looking for scholarship. And like I said, like, probably my parents could have afforded, maybe, possibly. But I was probably trying to be more independent at that point in time. I said, no, I don't want my parents' money. I want to do it myself. And then I could see like my seniors were going, my batchmates already had an offer to do masters or and they fully paid scholarship. So that was the third motivation. I said, okay, maybe this is something, another pathway that I can really, think of. So I went through those three kind of different reasons. One, I can't work in the industry because of my personal reasons. I'm quite sensitive. Second, yes, I'm fed up people saying that you coming from doctor's family, you don't have, you're not studying medicine. I said I will add doctor. And the third, like I said, if you want to do higher education and if you can, get scholarship, then you need to have a research background. So that pulled me into research. So that was probably like from where I started. But once I got into that, I really got motivated because when you can see that you can make a difference in terms of addressing either industry problem or your work is being cited to influence the policy. I remember first time when I published, and probably it was not probably the biggest joyous moment in my life because you don't realize the value. But when I Googled my name and the paper came up, yes, certainly I was really, very happy because, I could see, yes, somebody actually, I can find my name on Google and with my paper, not just name. And then somebody cited my first word as, oh, somebody found it, useful and valuable. So those were the reason I think, it's a reward afterwards. But I think what I would say is like you have to just take a chance. That's one thing. Something you think that probably would take you in different direction. There's no harm in trying out. I think, oh, this is the age that you can take a risk to try out because you don't have much of obligation in many ways. Not always, but yes, some. You probably have got more freedom at this point. Once you've got family, a lot of things get quite complex. So a lot of decisions you can't make for different reasons. So I'll give you an example. Right now, my family lives in Bristol. I work in Portsmouth, so I have to commute. It's about around maybe 200 kilometers journey every day. But I don't do it every day because it's too much of time commute and spend time in commuting, and then you don't actually get rest yourself. And you when you start growing older, I think you have to take care of yourself. So I normally go there, stay a couple of nights, and then come back. But then it becomes more difficult. So ideally, I would like to maybe move closer to the family, but then at the moment, I have to wait for the opportunity. Now you can bring your family there, but my wife works in Bristol, so it becomes quite complex. So many things are out of your control. So you just have to wait for the right moment. But like I said, when you are still in studying and you're looking for, I mean, take risk because if you don't take risk at that point in time, you will not get a second chance afterwards. Not necessarily. Some people can, not everybody will.
Sir, if you have to choose again out of research and industry, what you will choose?
I think I probably have become more researcher. I think if you would ask this question probably soon after I finished my PhD, I would have a different answer. I think I certainly wanted to go in industry at that point in time. So I always wanted to work in industry. I wanted to be a consultant, to be honest. And McKinsey was my dream company at that point in time. So I was aspiring to get there. But I think again, sometimes, like I said, not everything that you want you get. It's true. I think you have to create your own journey. So very much like how I transitioned into research, how I ended up in the UK to do my PhD, I think my journey in academia is very similar. So like I said, I was coming to an end of my scholarship, but my supervisor actually went on sabbatical to Australia. So he was very slow in responding to my request. And British people are very relaxed. They said, "Oh, don't worry, it will happen." But I said, "My scholarship is running out. Yes, I have time. The university not kicking me out, but I will have to find my way to fund myself afterwards." So I started applying for jobs. So I had another good friend of mine who I met him in Hong Kong. He was a postdoc, a Hong Kong guy, and he moved to UK soon after when I started my PhD and started working as a lecturer in one of the universities in the UK. So I used to keep in touch with him regularly. So I spoke to him. I said, "This is my situation. My scholarship is going to finish in 6 months. I don't think my PhD going to finish in next 1 year because my supervisor is not here. I've done writing, but he need to give me feedback. He need to allow me to submit, and we don't know the end outcome. So even after submitting, external may say like, you may need another 6 months to work on the revision. So we don't know the outcome. So what should I do? So he said, "Oh, there's a few positions coming up in my university. You have a good profile. Why don't you apply?" So okay, it's not a bad idea, although I don't want to, but I need somewhere to survive. So I applied, but I think when I was putting my application, there was another position open up in another university. So I thought, okay, same application, let's check in both places. And it was surprise. I never got shortlisted where I applied, but I got shortlisted for the other one. And when actually I was waiting for that one, few more opportunities came up. So you just get, I just got motivated. Like, let's put application where I feel I can go. And Dublin one came, but one thing I knew that in the UK at that point in time, if you get shortlisted, even in overseas, they pay for your flights and travel. So I really I love traveling. So I said, okay, Dublin is not very far, is a neighboring country, only 40 minutes flight. So let's put my application. And actually, I put my application simply to explore Dublin. I had no intention to work there. So I thought if I get shortlisted, of course, they will pay for my flight and at least I can see another country. So I ended up getting interviewed, and both in the UK, both in Dublin. So I got the UK offer first, so that was a big relief. So I spoke to my supervisor that I got it. There was another university interview afterwards, so I went there. Unfortunately, I got that one as well. So my supervisor helped me to choose the best one. He said, "No, go for this one, is better." But then it was a time when the visa rules were changing. So in the UK, as you know, visa rules keep on changing every time, and there was a significant change. So they said you have to finish your PhD, then only you can get a visa afterwards. I said, "Oh, that is probably another year. So can you hold my job for a year?" They said, "We will give you 3 months." So I was kind of against stress. Yes, got a job. It looks like I'm losing, and again, but in between, the Dublin offer came suddenly out of blue, and which was a surprise because I said, like, I went there and I was very relaxed. I don't think I cared in the interview, so I was very open. So probably maybe that's what they liked it, to be honest, because I knew that I had a job offer in my hand, and I'm here simply for fun. And eventually, when they offered me, so my only question was that, "Will you give me a visa?" No negotiation, anything. I said, and they said, "You say yes, and we'll sort out the visa." And that was my response, yes, because I was desperate to just find something to survive because it was almost coming to an end of my scholarship. So that's how I ended up in academia. And my plan was to just stay there for a year until I finished my PhD, and then I moved back to industry. And that never happened because certainly I had no teaching experience at that point in time. And again, I said I was fortunate to get some really good mentors. So I was very honest. I said to them, I'm a very senior professor, quite old, and I said, "Listen, I haven't done any teaching." So he said, "Have you done PhD or you're a PhD student?" I said, "Yes." "So you know how to do research?" I said, "Yes." "You know what, if you know what to do when you don't know anything?" I said, "Yes." So he gave me a few books and he said, "Go and prepare. You will be fine." So we have full confidence that you can do that. So that's how I think, he gave me a bit of boost, like, yes, you can do that. And I remember first day in my lecture with 200 students, I was shivering there. My voice was really kind of not what I should be, not trying to make any eye contact because more worried about, like, what would happen if they ask me a question which I don't know, rather than actually thinking what I'm teaching. So that fear inside me probably, but but again, I was probably coming from the Indian context. Maybe that's was more fearful because we used to pull down teachers, and I think we're known for that. I think probably you guys still do that. So if somebody we know that is not really good, no, we will find a way to show them they're not really good. But I think the Western people have a different approach. Here is more collaborative, so there's no kind of barrier between the teacher and student. So here they see a teacher as a friend, a colleague in that sense. So nobody calls me here professor. Nobody at all. We don't like it either. They will call me Vikas, that's a normal. And I think probably it took me more time to say this to my supervisor to find his name. So, so what happened is, of course, over time, I think I really started enjoying that interaction. Like, then I felt, okay, in industry, I might be working, yes, doing whatever, but here I have an opportunity to influence other people's life. Especially like when, finish your teaching and then students come back and give you some good feedback, and that makes a difference. When somebody says like, listen, because of your teaching, this is who I am. And I felt maybe my teachers felt the same. And I could see the pride, for example, whenever I see Professor Tiwari and other people, they feel the same pride. I mean, I still meet my school teachers and I could see the joy. And that kind of, it's very difficult to explain how you feel at that point in time. But then I felt maybe, it's not a bad place to be. And that's how I think, I just stayed. And research I always really liked. So I thought, okay, if I go there, I'm not sure if I will get a chance to do research in the areas. And academics used to get more freedom. Certainly things are changing now, but there it was, you can do research in any areas you want. They were not really kind of thing that you have to do exactly in this area. So you may be teaching in one area, you can still do research in other domain. So I was teaching more like, my background was more like, in metallurgy, and then my research was very much in production manufacturing systems at that point in time. Supply chain, I really got motivated, so I started working in supply chain domain. But I was teaching all about, strategy. So it has no links in some way. I mean, some links you can of course establish, but it was management I was teaching to my students. But they were okay that you don't have to do research in strategy. You can do research in supply chain. We're absolutely fine with that. So when I got that flexibility, work time was flexible. Of course, you don't have to be in the university all the time. If you're teaching, you have to be there. If you are meeting student, you have to be there. If you've got meetings, you have to be there. But the rest of the time is your time. So, if I'm no teaching tomorrow, no meetings tomorrow, I can stay home or I can stay in the office. So that level of flexibility, I just thought about future as well. Like, and when you get married, when you have kids, you need that level of flexibility that you can go and pick up your kids from the school, not like 9 to 5 in the office, which I think is not going to be possible in Mackenzie because they're in the office, you're in the office. Here, I can manage my time. Certain days, if I can't, for different reason, if I have external commitment, I can ask my colleague, can you cover for me? And in return, I will cover for you. I can't do the same in the office necessarily. So I think when you take the kind of perks you get from that, of course, it's not as well paid as industry job in many sense, but the amount of flexibility, if you add up, I think probably is a really good place to be in. So that really kept me in academia. And again, I said I don't regret that decision, to be honest.
Thank you so much, sir. So the next question I would like to ask, what skills or habits should students start developing during college if they wish to pursue research or higher studies?
I think again, I said first, of course, is the mentorship is very important. Like I've said to you, I mean, if we were all fortunate to have some really good mentors in faculties who really motivated and helped us to create our own careers. But like I said, not always you will get the ideal environment. But if you are really motivated in research, like a number of us are in research, I think at least here in the UK, you may already know my batchmate Alok Chaudhary. He's in Warwick University. You've got my seniors, Professor Manish Kumar, he's in Cardiff. Professor Neeraj, he's in Essex. Professor Nishikant, he's in Hull University. And there are others, who are. So I think get in touch with us if you're really interested in research. And it's not always you do research in the area that you are always in. So like I said, yes, I started my research more in metallurgy. So my first paper was on steel making process. But then I moved on because I think you have to go with the flow. That's how probably I see it. Because if you get too stuck, and I think this is what I see, a lot of my colleague in my university, because sometimes they're too narrow. They say, "Oh, I'm teaching in this area. I just want to do research in this area," which is fine. That's your hobby. You can do that, but then you need to see where the opportunities are. For us as an academic to survive, you have to publish in good outlets. You have to generate research income, and income is not open in every area because sometimes if you're looking for government funding, now recently UK government started about the new industrial strategy. So they're saying there's only 8 sectors we're going to fund in these areas. Any research that doesn't fall in those 8 areas, unfortunately, will not get funded at this point in time, or there are very limited opportunities. So I will be fool if I say I will stick to my narrow field. I should probably be more open to explore new areas where I know there's an opportunity going to emerge. And you create. So I think it's about knowing what's happening. I think having some clarity what you really want to do. That's second thing. And the way that we approach in past, like if you really wanted to do an MPhil or a PhD, we looked at where we want to do. For example, and of course, we all have dream destinations. Like I want to do in Texas, I want to do here. Or and then you will used to look at the faculties who are working. Who are the faculties? If I want to do in mechanical engineering, who are the faculties in mechanical engineering? Then little bit read about their work. They all are. Most of them are active researchers. Let's read their work of course, every first time when you read, not everything will make sense, but over time when you start reading, start things will start making sense. And no harm in approaching those individuals. That's something we always hesitate. Like people will not respond. Yes, maybe 9 out of 10 will not, but one will respond, and that's where it all starts. And I think knowing them and getting in touch, asking maybe, can I do something, for example, in my capacity, some way I can get engaged, and I'm sure people will give you some ideas to start with, and then you just carry on. I think it's very important to develop some tracks. The problem with all of us is that even if we have the potential, nobody believes. So everybody asks for evidence. So what evidence you can give that you can do this? Yes, you have a degree, I understand, but can you do this thing? So for us, I think our journey was very much like we proved ourselves. Like, we worked with those individuals, published paper. Then they said, yes, this person probably I can give scholarship, because now I've tried and tested this individual and can deliver, not just fake promises. So no, there was cases. I think some of my juniors, one or two, I will again not name them. They were also given the same opportunity, but when they came out, they didn't do the work for whatever reason. Either they were not interested or not motivated, and that does have some time impact, especially when it's coming through some links. If Professor Tiwari is sending to somebody, it's my responsibility to ensure that his reputation is not damaged. So I have to really work hard. Some students didn't care. I used to, like, at one point when I was in Dublin, I had more flexibility where actually I could hire a student on internship. So at that point in time, of course, I hired few students, but that time Professor Tiwari, I think, moved in IT Kharagpur. So he used to send students from there. So I could fund 2 students every year at that point in time. So, so I think that kind of opportunities can emerge. And at the moment, unfortunately, it's not because of the financial circumstances around universities. So 90% universities are struggling because their revenue has been cut down. I think probably US is same at this point in time. But it doesn't mean that there will be no opportunity or it will not emerge in near future. So I think making yourself known that you are interested and you're looking for that is and what skills you can bring. I know, like recently, Alok is looking for somebody in AI and other areas. So if you develop your parallel skills, I know you're doing manufacturing or mechanical or metallurgy. If you have an ability or time to develop some other parallel skills, maybe that skills will be useful. I think it's very important to develop some parallel skills because the future is changing very rapidly. The skill set is changing. We all know that AI and other things are going to be more prominent in those areas. So regardless whatever role you are in, they will expect you to have some good understanding of that area. Even in academia, it's changing. So I think if you start kind of learning new skill set, that will certainly keep you. And but also, like, being open for opportunity. Don't hesitate to approach. And don't think that I shouldn't be approaching now. Again, I said don't judge yourself. Let other people judge you. And show commitment. That's very important because sometimes people approach and then they dash off. Then you sometimes when you think, oh, not sure whether they're really motivated or they're really keen. So I think that's very important to kind of and then tap your network. Now, I mean, we were not very fortunate to have many alumni at that point in time, but now you guys have done a great job in pulling that information together, and where your alumni are, all around the world. So then reach them out. I think we are always happy in our capacity. If we think there's an opportunity, why not? We will help out. But problem is, like, if you don't come forward, then we don't know. So when something emerges, suddenly it doesn't strike. Oh, I should be probably going to NIF because then other people are already knocking your door. Then you end up picking somebody who is already knocking the door. So it's quite important to kind of knock that, and then it's up to the individual to, some people may be lucky at different point in time. That's different thing. That's your destiny. But unless you knock yourself, and we will know that you need it. If you're not knocking, I think you're in perfect place. You're happy in whatever you're doing. So that's something I would suggest. Like if you're really interested, then yes, reach out, and that's important. I may not be able to help you immediately, but I know that somebody is looking for. As soon as something comes up, I will. And same others will do the same. So just not me. Because all the like I said, I've met people from even ADCs, which arch enemies when we were at NIT at that point in time, but they are so open. I'm very happy when they see anybody just coming from the same institution. That is a bonding. When you meet them, I think they're very happy and they're very open. I think you lots of ADs actually now, taking students, hiring students. So it's not that seeing distinction between, like, whether you are doing diploma or degree. I think it's all same institution. It's same like being a family, right? And family, you've got different people, different characters, but still they're part of the family. And you help them out.
Yes, sir. What role do core subjects play in building a strong foundation for research?
I think it depends, like, whether you want to pursue career in your respective field. So if you're manufacturing, for example, or you're mechanical, or if you're doing electrical or metallurgy, I think it's important, like, the curriculum, unfortunately, I'm not sure if, again, something has changed in 20 years. I mean, we remember photocopying some of the notes called written 40 years ago. I'm not sure if it's still the case. I believe probably for some still, because same faculty still exist in some way. But I think, it's about reading and, opening a little bit of horizon. So reading yourself in what is happening in your domain, that is very important. So yes, having a core understanding of, thermodynamics or metallurgy or whatever is fine, but that gives you a basic understanding. If you really want to move forward, you need to see what's happening in this field now. And I think research papers are actually a good starting point. So go on Google Scholar, there's plenty of them are now openly available. So there wasn't a lot of time, it was hidden behind the subscription, but not anymore. If you struggle to find papers, reach out to your seniors. I mean, we all have good libraries here. If certain things you want to read and you can't access, just ask. If we have access, we'll give you that access. So I think that will help you to understand what is actually happening, because most of the courses that you read is a basic theories you read, right? And it's not always up to the, date in terms of like what's really happening, what things have changed, because that's part of the curriculum, maybe redesign, or maybe, I'm not sure how frequently they update. And that's one difference I found in India and probably here, is that here there's no kind of fixed syllabus in that sense. So we decide what the syllabus would be. So I think it's always good, like, for example, being an active researcher, I know what is the latest trend. So I'm not going to go back to the same theories, what I was teaching 20 years ago. I will look at, okay, blockchain is very popular, AI is very popular, and I will probably use those topics in my teaching delivery rather than getting stuck to a pre-described kind of, standard syllabus. So I think India probably, unless it has moved, I don't know, probably you would know more than I would. If it hasn't, then probably you need to learn yourself. So whatever area you are really interested in, go and read the magazines. LinkedIn is a good platform, for example, not only just for connecting with professionals, but also lots of useful information that gets posted. So a lot of latest trend, what's happening, latest discussion. So I think having awareness of that is very important, particularly for your interviews. When you go in interviews, I think in a good place, they will ask you, they will like to test you, like what you know, what's happening in this area. So I think having that level of awareness is very important. Having a bit of more knowledge about the latest advancement in your field is very important. But that will again shape you, your knowledge, your understanding, as well as your motivation as well. Because when people say, okay, I don't know, I'm interested in research, but I don't know what to do research. So that is a question you ask when you don't know anything. That's true. So first thing is to read a little bit, get some motivation, see what is interesting, and then see, reflect from your own perspective. Because then if you ask somebody a question and to help you out, then if they will be in a position, in a better position to help you out rather than something going very vaguely. So I think it's quite important to kind of, I would say, read lots of other materials beyond your course curriculum. And that's what I say, read some research papers. You don't need to understand each and everything in the research paper. That's another mistake people make. Sometimes they use complex methods. If your focus is just about understanding the area, method is irrelevant for you unless you're really interested in methods. Then it's important. So just read, like, maybe just the abstract of the paper, introduction, and what's your conclusion. How they reach the conclusion maybe not of your interest always, right? But I think what was the end conclusion and what is talking about, what something is still unknown. And that's where the research starts. So something you need to show a contribution, like what you can add. It doesn't have to be, when you think about adding, it's not about always a Nobel Prize. That's something completely new and groundbreaking. A small incremental addition is still a contribution. So I think in that way. I think that will only happen when you start reading. Read news. That's also important because a lot of things that's shaped by what's happening in the world. So I often used to read. I mean, not all the news is useful. Like there were lots of Bollywood masala. Don't read that too much. Read something relevant about the businesses. That's why I feel like LinkedIn is a fantastic platform. I read a lot on LinkedIn. Of course, I will go back to sometime BBC and all, but there I try to read more about what's happening in the politics. So you don't need to get too much influenced by what's happening because media is also biased, regardless whether it is, and it doesn't tell you a full picture. Like I said, back in India, we see all Pakistanis as an enemies. we don't necessarily see that when you come on this side of the world, because they're also humans, and not everybody is a bad person. They're good and bad everywhere. So it's about having that balanced view is very important. So don't get too overburdened on one side. And and I won't say like if you think that way is not your fault, because the information that feeds from all directions actually gives you that narrative. If you read the news, it's same. If you hear from other people, they say the same. The experiences that is brought in the light is the same. So you form opinion based on that. So sometimes I think the third perspective is very important to create that balance, your own view, rather than the view that is influenced by the society or by the individuals surrounding you. So that's very important. And I think the same goes for knowledge as well. Like, what you read in India may be very important, but, read about other places as well. What is the trend? Because, that trend, which is quite trendy, let's say in the UK, it will take no time for that trend to suddenly come to India in near future. Same is for, other way around as well. What is trendy in the India? And sometimes I feel like, we are now behind India in many sense, which is true. I say to my colleagues, I always think, oh, like lots of universities are thinking to open a campus in India, including my university. And I said, why you want to open a campus in India? They think, oh, British education sells. I said, forget about that. I mean, our institutions are much more better than yours. Yes, there are certain good things about that, like it's cultural thing, the experience thing, the approach is different. But it's not about that you are the best. There are much better institutions down there, but perhaps they don't have the same level of culture that we have here in terms of supporting students, in terms of research culture, and so on. So that's where probably you have got the uniqueness, not the brand name necessarily. But it's difficult for them to understand. I can see because they are surrounded by their own bubble, and they think everything is a perfect world. So that's what I think I would say. Like, try to open up your views, read more, talk to people, reach out, and learn new things, new skill set. Don't get just bound by what is being taught in the class. That's not always good enough. You will have to get additional skills to really do well in the future. I'm not sure if there's any question in the chat window. I don't see anything. Okay, I mean, let's give maybe other people an opportunity to ask. I mean, if you've got any specific questions in mind, this is your opportunity. But this will not be the only opportunity. I'm more than happy to come again. So there will be other opportunities as well. Anybody would like to ask any question?
Sir, hello.
Yes, yes, I'm hearing.
Sir, your feed. Yes, now everything's fine. If anyone have any question, they can unmute their mic and ask.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Uh,
Yeah, go ahead, ask your question.
uh, Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, what kind of opportunities unlocked after completing our PhD from abroad?
Um, okay, so like normally it doesn't end up in academia, all of us. I think Dilkus, if you mute your microphone, I think something echo. Yeah, thank you. So I think there are not most students here. I would say like British students, they tend to go in industry, most of them. So they do their PhD because PhD gives you a skill set in terms of how you can be an independent researcher. So things you can. So lots of them end up in being a consultant. Some go in depending upon the areas. If they're doing a PhD in biosciences, they will go in industry. So there are lots of research jobs within the industry setting as well. But vast majority of them in the past, maybe the trend might change recently, but they used to end up in academia as well. So depends like what you want. If you want to go in industry, it is still that pathway is open. It doesn't block your in entry into industry at all. And I think you go at a much more higher skill level. One of the reasons I said like in the beginning why I wanted to be in McKinsey, because McKinsey has a specific pathway for those who have done PhD. So you go become an not an assistant consultant, you become associate consultant directly. So you take a leap in that direction. So it's up to you where you want your career to be in. And I think whether masters or PhD both kind of opens up equal opportunities in that sense. But of course you're a much more seasoned person when you do a PhD, so you have a better skill set, and that probably will help you to create a career in either direction. But yes, it does open up especially in academia. With masters, very less likely, at least in the Western side nowadays. In past, it was possible as well. They will expect you to have a PhD. So I think it gives you a more flexibility in some sense. So if you want to go in industry, you can go in industry, or if you want to go to academia, that also opens up academia as well.
Okay, sir. Thank.
You're welcome. Any other question?
Sir, I don't think we have any more questions left.
No worries at all. Hopefully it was useful.
सर मैनी ऑफ द फियर अबाउट द इंग्लिश अरे हिंदी में भी पूछ लो यार जिसको पूछना है
हिंदी में पूछ लो, हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ।
Okay, sir. With the question.
हाँ,
Sir,
हिंदी में पूछ लो।
student here. So, sir, what footprint second year job?
Abhishek, I cannot hear you very clearly. I think that's the issue.
Here I'm repeating. I'm a second year student. Sir, what should footprint of a second year student to join research abroad?
Okay. So basically, like I said, it's all you start need to, first of all, I would say, think like what you want to do. I mean, abroad, if you're saying whether you want to do an MPhil, for example, or master's, when you say MPhil, because MPhil is a research degree in master's, otherwise it's standard MSc. If you're looking for scholarship, then MPhil is important because you don't get scholarship in master's program mostly. You can get some discounts, some waiver, but not a full fee. MPhil is more trendy in the US than in the UK because there are very few universities who offer MPhil, and of course, scholarship are dying at the moment here in the UK. In the US or in other countries, like if you want to go to Singapore, Hong Kong, yeah, you can absolutely do an MPhil. But there, I think what you would need to show, because there's a lot of competition. So it's not just you. There will be a number of other people who will be also vying for that scholarship. So I think first thing is to kind of, I would say easy would be to create that kind of opportunity yourself. So if you are interested in a particular area, so for example, if you're doing mechanical, look at people, if you target a university, let's say Hong Kong University, I'm just giving you an example, look at who is working in mechanical engineering area, you know, just maybe what's reaching them out and say like, you are right now, second year mechanical student and you're interested in doing MPhil, when you finish your degree, you've got 2 more years left, you know, is there any way I can, be involved in some small projects or something? And that's how you reach out. And some people will say yes, and most of them will. If they're really researcher, they will be very happy because we always look for people who can work. And it's voluntary work, and they will give you a bit more guidance. So that's how you start building that relationship. I think for us, like I said, me in particular, yes, I was fortunate to have a supervisor, a mentor there who was doing this on our behalf. So as Diwali was reaching out to this individual saying, okay, I like your work. So read some of the work about them, praise about their work. Who doesn't like if you say your work is fantastic? And then they will say, can our student do something for you? And then they will create a project and they will pass it on, and then you work on that project together. And I think you rebuild that relationship. And of course, even if they know that what level you're working, so they don't have very high expectations from you. What they're looking is an intent and motivation. That's what we all look for, because and because the work will be very different by the time you will go, and they know. So as far as I think you're learning, so you can ask them, okay, so what should, like in an area I really want to work with you, let's say in 2 years time, and I want to prepare myself, what would you suggest? So they will say either read this, read my work, have some discussion, pitch some ideas, and that's how you start building that relationship. I said, get in touch with one of us if any one of our areas actually is of your interest, and we can give you some guidance. That could be another way. So tapping your alumni contact, that's easy way, to be honest. But also, I think reading and knowing more about the university where you want to be. Even if you don't know the university, please look at the area. If you want in manufacturing, look at okay, which are the universities which offer good manufacturing courses? Who are the people who are there, and what work they do? So that's how you can start preparing yourself. And you don't necessarily always have to do the work in advance, but if you know and if you're familiar with their work, you can approach them before you apply. And most people would like to certainly take students who they know or they know about their work. So that we all look for a match. There's something, if I have to hire a PhD, I want somebody who is either really passionate, doesn't need to have my own connections, not at all. But that, do they really, have got some understanding of the area? That's first thing. So it's about knowledge, which you can gain by reading lots of things, lots of articles, and books. Second, we look for like what's their motivation. Are they simply here? They just want to be here in the UK. A lot of people just want to be in the UK. They're not really necessarily committed to the work. So that's something we try to test. So are you really passionate? What motivation have you got? If they all come up with a proposal, now you can write nowadays a proposal with an AI very easily. And but when you start interviewing them, then you find out maybe they don't have a clue what they're talking about. So I think that is very important to gain some good understanding of the subject area, and then look for like some guidance from those individuals, and that is the best way to prepare yourself. Like I said, if you want to go to states, start preparing for GRE now, because your GRE score will be very important. Most universities will have that's a minimum entry criteria. Like for UK, yes, English language test is there, and I did all my education in Hindi. My English at this moment is all conversational English. So I learned by talking to people. It's not that I was perfect from day one, not at all. And I still make lots of grammatical blunders. My son tells me that, Daddy, you're making error here and there. So he's my teacher now. So those things, I think, language always see that, it should not be seen as a barrier. I always say language is a mean of communication. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I still underestimate myself. Like I was saying earlier, like when I have to speak, I really get worried because I'm surrounded by British people. I think I know I'm going to make a blunder. But I've spoken to some of them who are really good friends of mine. Like, do you see me in the same light? They say they don't care. For them, they know that I'm an overseas person, and they don't expect that I have to be perfect. What they're looking for is whether they can understand me or not. As far as they can understand what I'm trying to say, the perfection is not needed. And this is where probably we all always get worried. Okay, my English is not perfect. Don't It doesn't have to be perfect at all. Nobody cares. As far as I can understand you, you can understand me. That's all we need. So it is just a mean of communication. I say, can they speak Hindi like I do? They can't, right? It's a difference. So I think you just put yourself in a different context. That's why I said don't compare, because when we go out, I mean, I still see like when I go out, you see people speak fantastic English, most of them in India, but are they really knowledgeable as I am? Not necessarily, right? So we're simply kind of judging ourselves through different lenses by saying that we are not really good. None of us are good. I've never been. We just have to believe in ourselves. That's what is more important.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really helpful answer. Sir, what are some good memories of NIFT?
Oh, there's lots. Um, I think I know. Recently, Dilkush will know. I think I went to see my room and the hostel. I think we had lots of good times with my batchmates and lots of events. We used to play volleyball in the middle of the ground. I think still I could see the net was there. So I believe you guys still do. Um, I think it was more. I think Jinx was another fantastic memory. I think every batch has to organize one Jinx event, and I think that was another thing we always cherish. I think the good time we spend with the seniors as well. Like in a lot of this relationship. Like I speak to, for example, my seniors like Manish and Neeraj sir very frequently, almost on weekly basis. But this was a bonding that was not developed after coming here. We knew each other. We when we were in NIFT. So I think forging those kind of relationship is very important. It's not that you will really need them, so it's not need-based relationship. It is something natural. So actually, you have a mutual respect for each other, and I think, and that is very important because when you come out, you want to form a community of people who share something common. And here, the commonality is our relationship with NIFT at that point in time. And I think often our conversation when we meet up, we don't talk about our universities. It's all about NIFT. So it is all about old memories, what we used to do. And other things. I think now most of the batches have started doing their get-togethers. I think Manish sir is in India already. I think he's from 2004 batch. They're having their get-together somewhere in India at the moment. So I think those memories. I think whenever we Niftians meet, we talk about NIFT memories. We don't talk about anything else. So that tells you how much we're still connected with NIFT. I think our wives they get like really like bored. Like why you guys always talk about NIFT because we're Niftians. So we always have we talk about something else, some experience with the faculties. So I think its memory is there. I think in each and every aspect of that journey. I think the time that you spend, you only cherish when you finish and then you move forward. I don't think we really realize, even I don't think you guys go through ragging anymore, but we were ragged at that point in time. But that was a different, of course, very angry at that point in time. But now we remember and we laugh those things. So everything is a memory. I think the people that you meet, the faculty members you meet, I think important is to keep those connections alive is very important. And often we don't do. Like I've always done that. I mean, I still know my teachers. I still try enough. I found them on social media. When I find time, if I'm there in India, if I can meet them, I do meet them. Same thing, I think it's meeting. If you're here in the UK for whatever reason, come and see us. We will be very happy to host you. So, so I think that is very important. That the trust and the friendship that you build, this 4 years, that really makes a huge difference. And it's not that it's like I said, it's not because you will need them. It's not. It's simply to share those good memories. I think that's what is more important. And then in the meanwhile, if you can help somebody, why not? I think that should be your attitude. Because it's part of the bigger family. Juniors, seniors are all same. You know. Hopefully that probably answers your question. I'm not sure.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
We have a
excuse me. Sir, I wanted to ask if there is any opportunity for the upcoming juniors to work on the project under your guidance, sir.
And like I said, independent work, yes, we can always create a project. Um, the only challenge we had, like, we in past we used to fund students, so I could have, hired you for 2 months here on a summer internship. But because of the new changes happening in the visa, but also funding has dried up. Um, but yes, if you independently want to be part of project, I can certainly create a project, and I think I can involve any one of you if you are interested. Not a problem at all, because I want somebody to work. So why not? And in return, if you can benefit from that work, absolutely fine. There's also network, not just here. Like if you want to work within India, and I've got lots of people I know in different institutions in India, and I can check with them if you want to do internship on a research project with them. And then that's another opportunity. You can travel within India, and hopefully they might have some funding as well. So either in IITs, IIMs, MDI, wherever. I mean, just tell me the area that you're interested in, and I'll find somebody, or you can work with me. So that option is also open.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
no, sir, we don't have any questions left. Sir, we are going to start a rapid fire round where we request you to answer each question within 10 seconds.
Okay, I will try my best. I'm not really good at rapid fire.
So the first question is research or teaching.
Research.
So the next question is one book every student should read.
Oh my God, I've never read a proper book, to be honest. That's my response. I've always got research papers. I hate reading books.
Okay, so next question is one skill more important than marks.
I think communication is very important. I think networking and communication is I think probably more important than actually just reading anything. Because a lot of times you get opportunities by just through those networking and communications.
Sir,
Important.
yes, sir. So
Just saying, like, sorry, go ahead. No, just saying, like, be open. I think very important. I think have that open conversation is very important. So often we restrict things to ourselves. I think that doesn't take you anywhere.
So the next question we have is lab work or theory?
I think lab work.
Answer India or abroad for higher studies?
At this point in time, I would say it depends what you want. So I think I can't give you in one word. If you're looking for like quick industry, then I would say India, and simply because there's a lot of visa restriction nowadays everywhere. I think the US and the UK, I can certainly tell you. If it is about creating your research journey, then overseas. I think overseas they have got the best environment at this point in time. But going forward, I think India is going to have more opportunities. And that's true. But I think I always say like it's better to come at least for some time out, because then you can contribute better there, because being in the same system doesn't open your eyes. So you have to come out of the system to see from the third perspective and then go there to make those changes.
So the last question we have is one word to describe research.
I would say it's more about passion, because research is driven by passion. And I think if you don't have passion, you cannot do research, because the journey is never smooth. There will be ups and downs. There will be lots of hiccups, but it's passion that keeps everything, all together. So, and I think all the curiosity-driven research is coming from the passion, because people are really motivated. They want to really find something, and so that is, I see, a key driver for research. Hard work come afterwards.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your quick and thoughtful responses. Now we come to the end of the session. Sir, if you would like to share a final message with all of us, we would be truly great.
I would say, like, be proud of where you are. I think that's very important. Don't underestimate yourself. Like I said, don't judge yourself. I think your work should be judged by others, not by yourself. So but it's good to be very critical of yourself. That's also very important. That will keep you grounded. And be open. Like I said, be open, and and talk. I mean, if you got issues, if you looking for opportunity, ask, because we don't have that future power yet that I can judge exactly by looking at anyone what they need, unless somebody say that this is what I need. So I think there is no harm in asking, but don't get disappointed if the response is not in your favor. You've done your task, and then leave it. And when the time would come, it would happen. And never look back. And I think, and always proud to be, of your roots. So from wherever you are, from wherever you studied, don't. Some people think that they don't want to tell from where they've studied. Why not? And I say, like, I've studied in a village school in my childhood. I'm always proud to be Niftian. Some people, I think, at that point in time, I remember when we were graduating, not many people were really happy to say, I want to say I'm from NIFT, but I'm always proud to be Nifty. And I think, and everybody will be afterwards, but I think it's just sometimes you feel like that. But I think it's just a matter of time. And when you reflect back, I think none of us ever see that, we were in the wrong place. We felt we were actually in the right place. And if I'm here because of NIFT, if NIFT was not there, I'm not sure where I would be, to be honest.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your valuable time, experiences, and guidance with us. I would also like to thank all the students for joining today's session and making it interactive and meaningful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, like, if you need,
Thank you, sir, for such good
Thank you, sir.
explanation.
thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to see you.